Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello and welcome my special guest, Dr. Fred Gallo, psychologist, author, teacher, and founder of the term energy psychology. Dr. Gallo has written several books, including Energy Psychology, Energy Tapping for Trauma, and the Tapping Toolbox. He has worked in this field for many years with his own practice since 1977 and has trained with founders of the field, including our own Roger Callahan, who started thought field therapy, which he'll be talking about, I'm sure, as we go on in our conversation. Dr. Gallo has his own certification program called Advanced Energy Psychology, or AEP, and he has trained several thousand professionals all over the world. He has also lectured at and traveled professionally throughout the world, the United States, Canada, Europe, Fiji, and Africa. And I am so happy to have him on this program today. Dr. Gallo and I met years ago through the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. And when I first came on the board, Dr. Gallo was president. So thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too, Lori. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Oh, very much. And is there anything else you'd like to share with our guests today before we launch into some deeper topics about energy psychology and the higher self and so on?
Okay, well, let me see. What else? Besides being a psychologist, let's see, I have a family.
Okay.
My wife, I have 3 daughters. I have 5 grandchildren. They're all the love of my life. Friends, cats. I have a couple cats. We have a horse. We have a horse.
Wow.
He's gotten kind of old now, though. He's like 30 years old, but he used to have about 4 horses, and we've had dogs, but we don't have dogs right now.
Oh,
I like good food. I like good food. What else? I love music. I used to strum the guitar and make songs.
okay.
I haven't done that in a while, but I have a whole bunch of songs that I wrote over the past. So, there's a lot of things that turn you on, and it's psychology. I'm very much, I'm addicted to psychology. It's like a positive addiction, I could say, and psychotherapy, So
Yeah, that's
anyway,
great.
I guess there's more to say, but, we all have more to say, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, family, food, creativity, and, it's all about love and how we express love
Sure,
in the world. And we all
absolutely.
find our own rhythms for that. And it's so neat that you were involved from the beginning of the field.
Mhm.
And yet you also bridge to so many other things. You are always transforming yourself. And I was so excited when we came up with this notion of talking about the higher self or expanded consciousness. I'm not quite sure where we're going to go with the conversation, but
Sure.
just to summarize just briefly, for those who don't know, energy psychology is a mind-body modality for healing and for
Mhm.
performance enhancement and for alleviating pain and so on. There's research based on this, but basically it's focused on the mental state and the body state of getting into a relaxed, open position in the body while you're dealing with things that are distressing or upsetting, so that
Sure.
you can have transformation. And
Mhm.
most people focus on the physicality of it while saying words and being in the emotional state. So touching the endpoints of the meridians, tapping, or
Mhm.
holding or breathing. But you now have bridged in your awareness as well to the higher states of consciousness using these methods. And this is something that is probably where it started back in ancient times.
Sure.
But psychology has kind of pared it down to some basics, and it looks like it's kind of opening back up again, maybe integrating more with origins. And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of summarize that briefly so we can kind of have the audience understand a little bit more before we take it to another layer.
I see any approach that we use as a model, as a representation of the truth, okay? That it's never the ultimate truth. We're working our ways toward it, okay? And so one of the things I like to do is, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe I get bored or something. I learn a method, and I really delve in. I use a method with myself, with other people. I really delve into it, and then at some point, whenever that's kind of like integrated for me, I realize there's something missing. Okay. And then what I do is I look for where can we expand on. And sometimes I look at other models and how those other models could enhance or maybe they're compatible with, or they add some other piece to it, right? So some of the methods I've looked at recently over the past a couple of years or so is acceptance and commitment therapy, for example.
Okay.
I used to have a panic disorder as a result of a trauma that I had. And here's maybe this fits in with the higher self, is what I used to, anytime I had a panic attack, and they usually lasted maybe 15 minutes, okay, and I would always do something to try to get rid of it, breathing into a bag, before I knew about tapping or anything like that.
Yeah.
And praying, pacing around, rubbing my hands together. I didn't know that could have something to do with havening. I don't know. But this one day I had this severe panic attack, which went on for a couple hours. And I was trying everything to get rid of it. And I'll try to keep this brief. The things I did is first of all, the way the experience of panic attack was for me is first I had a sense of unreality.
Yeah.
I felt very dissociated, and then my interpretation to that at the time, I didn't understand it that way, but that I was going to die any second, that I was right on the doorstep of death, right? And I was terrified. And so I tried all these things. And one of the things I tried is, I washed my face with water, back of my neck with water. I took a shower, then I took a cold shower. I drank a shot of whiskey. And then the last thing I did is I ran down the street. I thought if I ran down the street, maybe I'd get rid of this thing. And I ran down about maybe a fifth of a mile and then ran back and got in the house, still having a panic attack. And I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I'll tell you what I was feeling at the time is I was feeling hopeless and I was feeling pissed. Combination of the two, right?
Yeah.
And I went into my bedroom, I laid flat down on the bed. And I was probably about 27, 28 years old when this happened. I laid flat down on the bed and I said, get me, go ahead and get me. And it seemed like instantaneously the panic was gone. Okay. And that was baffling. I did what I didn't know the term for it at that time, but I basically did a body scan. I'm looking for where this panic was. Where did it go? Where's that anxiety? And I couldn't find anything. Okay. So I remember I rolled over on my back, and I looked up at the ceiling. I thought, what happened there? And I thought, well, I did this and this and this and this. And then finally I do this. And it was like it was like a Copernican revolution. Before that, I was trying everything to get rid of it. And now I gave up trying to get rid of it. I don't know that acceptance would be the right word, but I acknowledged that I was even willing for it to be more than what it was. It was like, I don't care, do your thing, right? I thought that was the complete opposite. It's just like I gave up the struggle.
Yeah.
You know? And then I realized the second thing, this was an important nuance that I realized, that I couldn't do that as a way of getting rid of a panic attack. That if I did that as a way of getting rid of a panic attack, it wouldn't be any different than taking the cold shower, running down the street, whatever. Okay. I had to be for real. It had to be authentic. I had to really mean it.
Yeah.
And about a week or two later, I was sitting in, and this had happened in my living room. I was sitting in the living room again. And all of a sudden, I had this feeling of unreality come over me. And
You're
I
like, oh
noticed
no,
it.
oh
And
no.
no, I didn't. I just noticed it and I go, oh, and I closed my eyes and went into it.
Okay.
I just go ahead, you know. It was a weird experience. I can just tell you what my internal experience was. It was like there was a beam of light, a ball of light, and it went boom, 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 real fast. The next thing you know, it was a stream of light and vanished, and I was present again.
Whoa.
Okay, so that was my experience. Now, I would like to say that I never ever had another panic attack after that, but it wasn't true.
Okay.
I had, I think, 2 panic attacks after that, sometime later. An interesting thing is whenever I realized I was having a panic attack and I gave up the struggle, I managed. And I think maybe one time I tried to do the same old thing, trying to get rid of it again. So it was an important lesson.
But what a poignant and beautiful example from something that was so painful and personal for you. So I just want to thank you for that,
Oh,
for sharing that
thank you for.
story. There's so much in it, and it would be an amazing case example to kind of analyze from different perspectives and so on. But I love what the word that came to me when you were talking was surrender. You surrendered to the totality of the experience, no matter where. You were willing to go to the brink and have to be annihilated, basically, in order to have some sort of a resolution so that you weren't being chased and dogged by this terror. So thank you for that. I think a lot of people are going to relate to that story, and it was an incredible story. So I have to say that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here's what I think goes on. Whenever we have what we'll call a problem, whether it's anxiety, panic, traumatic memories, depression, physical pain, whatever, okay, we're caught up in it. Okay, we're caught up in it. And so you could say we're possessed by it. We're hooked by it. We're Stephen Hayes calls it fused. And whenever that's happening, what happens? I think it's happening neurologically, cognitively, energetically. We're blocked. Okay, we are not present at that time. We're not present. We're caught up. Now, then what we do is we struggle with it, right? So we do one thing. One, we maybe even our level of consciousness about it is very low, and it just takes over. That's one thing. Or we get a sense of what's going on, and we try to get rid of it, like run down the street, take the shot of whiskey. Okay. And all that does is keeps it going.
It feeds it.
Right. It feeds it. It feeds it. It feeds it. It nurtures it. You know, and so it's like I'll say to a client, I'll say, don't think of an elephant.
You can't help it.
They can't help it. They can't help. They keep going. I said, don't think. I got to feel better. I got to feel better. I got to quit thinking this way. I got to get this out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I say, you know, there's a principle in mathematics, as I understand it, and I'm not the greatest mathematician, but there's four basic principles of math. You got addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But when you get down to it, you could say there's only two basic principles, and it would be addition and subtraction. Because multiplication is just accelerated addition, and division is accelerated subtraction, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get down to it, when you really get down, you go, well, if there was only one principle, what is it? And it's addition. All subtraction is addition and reverse.
Okay.
That's how our minds work too. You can't subtract. It only adds. Okay. It's always adding. Once you get something there, it's there and it keeps adding, right? Now you can do this. If something happens, like you get some kind of a hooked by a negative thought, or if it's early on, you can nip it in the bud. You can say no. And that works. But usually it passes us beyond that, and you're caught up in it. And once it's there, you can't use that strategy anymore. Okay. So in a basic principle in energy psychology is, you start off with this idea of reversal. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're hooked and you go, well, what is reversal? So you can either go forward toward health or backwards, which is this reversal, right? And so, and Callahan realized, I think, an important thing, and he looked to Carl Rogers' idea of, if you really accept the client unconditionally, they will then come to accept themselves and therefore start to change. Okay. Yep. Well, it's about acceptance. So now, but acceptance understood in the right way. Acceptance doesn't mean giving in. Acceptance is acknowledging, or it's like a gift, somebody offers you a gift, you accept the gift. Okay. It's just like that. Okay. So anyway, so you go, even though I have this problem, or even though I'm depressed, I accept myself. Okay. Or you could even take it further. Even though I have this problem, I accept it and I accept myself. That would even take it even more of an acceptance and more of a being mindful. Okay. Non-judgmental about it. Very important point. Okay. Now, when you're hooked, I say you're caught up in the content of your thoughts and emotions. You are the term could be, you are self as content.
Okay.
You experience yourself as that content, and that ain't you. Okay. Now,
You're identifying with the circumstances of the environment and your mood and all the rest, as if that's your full and total self experience.
Right. You experience that as yourself, and that ain't yourself. That is not the higher self. Okay. Right. But then what you do is, if you accept and then you tap, let's say, you can tap, you can breathe, you can do breathing, you can do moving your body.
Yep.
You can do logosynthesis, you can use sentences to take this energy that's not you and send it there. Yeah. And the energy that's you, bring it back to yourself. And
right.
Do that gesturalize or words. There's lots of ways you can deal with that energy. But once you get unhooked, and through the acceptance and the getting in touch with the present moment, now you're present, and now you're the observer self, which is equated with the higher self.
Yes.
You now self as context rather than self as content. They talked about that in the S training a long time ago. I took the S training, and it was like your mind it's a context. It's not. You're able to step outside of the mind, okay, and be more in touch with your true self. I guess. Okay, so once you're there, so now your energy is in a different place. It's in flow.
Yep.
Okay, you're in touch with your higher self, and what you have access to then is your highest values. Okay, and then, but it's not enough to just have your highest values. There's an old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay, it takes more than just having that idea, that value, you have to take action. You have to, if it's a true value, you take action toward that value.
Yeah. The word
Okay?
coming to my mind is you embody it. You embody it. You embody the value.
Mm-hmm.
You think of it, you live it, you act upon it. It becomes your worldview, and it's the guiding force for how you interact with the world.
You're being authentic
Yeah.
at that point too.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can't just be lip service. You don't just, if it's just lip service, it's empty.
Yeah. It's just a mental state then.
Yeah. It's just or it's mimicking somebody else or whatever. You gotta own it, like you're saying, basically. So anyway, when we tap, if we look at the tap, and that's just one modality for energy psychology, I think there's many carats of the diamond,
Yeah.
But when you tap, you're actually, you could look at it in a different ways. One is, we talk about it's like the moving of energy blockages, get the energy blockages going. But at the same time you're doing this, if I'm tapping here, that puts me more present with my body. Okay? It's like if I'm hooked and I've lost presence and I'm doing this, it kind of like wakes you up.
Can you describe for our viewers, our listeners who are not viewing, when you say I'm doing this, can you describe what it is you're actually physically doing?
Yeah. If I'm tapping my eyebrow, and I go, well, this is the bladder meridian, and the side of the eye is my gallbladder meridian, and under my eye, stomach meridian, and central vessel under my nose. Governing vessel under my nose. Or if I use my MLT technique, midline technique, I go back of the head, which is on governing, top of the head, which is on governing forehead, third eye, governing vessel, under your nose, governing vessel, central vessel, under your bottom lips, your thymus gland, which is also on the central vessel. But while you're doing, even though you're doing that, and I believe there's this energy we're moving, but at the same time, I'm present.
Yeah.
I'm becoming more present. I'm present in my body. Now, I like to do it this way. Okay, so once the person taps and they're tapping here, I say, now take a deep breath.
So you're tapping the center of your chest right now.
Yeah, right at the center of the chest. They're tapping at the thymus going. So you do this, then I say to the person, now take a deep breath. They take a deep breath. That also gets you kind of like shifting from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system. Like that. And then I have them look around, look at something, describe that. Now they're more present. Now, what do you hear? What do you smell? Okay, now you're more stepping back from it all. So that's kind of a combination of some things used in ACT and energy psychology. It's bringing those two together, and they work nicely together. Okay,
you're getting people into the physicality of their 5 sensory system, their here and now presence, their breathing. You're oxygenating the brain, the bloodstream. You're getting them to talk. That you can't be completely paralyzed in fear when you're also in the here and now and taking in new information moment to moment.
If I make it that I'm going to do this tapping to feel better, if I put that as my focus, now we're back into the don't think of the elephant.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I like to tell people, I say, if you're, let's say parents are, say, if your kid was in the house and the house was burning and you were outside, would you go in and save your kid? They say, oh yeah, of course. Would you be afraid? They'll go, well, yeah, I think I'd be afraid, but I'm still going to go in the house. Right. Why do you think that you can't have freedom of movement because of an emotion? Okay, so it's like you're more than that emotion. You're more than that thought. You are the higher self. Okay. And so if we sell people on as energy psychologists, if we sell them on the idea that you just have to feel better, you got to get rid of the emotion, I think we're selling them short. Okay. Now, true, here's the thing. Of course, everybody wants to feel better. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, you don't go, I like to suffer unless you're a real masochist. Okay.
Right.
And then that wouldn't be suffering anymore. You would be enjoying it.
Yeah.
But if you put the focus on that I have flexibility of my behavior in spite of that emotion,
Yeah.
okay, then often what happens is you feel better in the process anyway.
Well, of course, because
Yeah,
it's a
you
soul
feel,
freedom that you're being
yeah,
given.
right. You're still getting, you'll feel better. But even if you didn't feel better, it's funny. I was talking to this cleared the other day. I was talking to this lady who had, she's had all these different traumas, and we're discussing it first, and here's where intuition comes in, I guess.
Mm.
So, I said, well, what goes on? And she's describing it. I said, oh, I see here you also have a pain condition.
Mhm.
I said, there's a technique I could use to help you with that could also apply to this thing of these traumas. I said, would you focus on the pain for a moment?
Mm.
Okay. She goes, I don't do that. I go, what do you mean? She goes, I don't really pay attention to the pain. Well, what do you do? She said, well, I just go about my business. I mean, is it there? Yeah, it's there, but it's irrelevant. I said, huh, why don't you do that with these thoughts about the trauma?
Mm-hmm.
And she goes like this, she goes, wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
and it just hit me. I thought, we didn't have to do any tapping. And you could just see how she lit up, that she realized this resource that she has in dealing with trauma, she could have, or with pain, she
Yep.
could apply that with this.
Yep.
Okay. And so she was supposed to come in the following week. She calls me and she said, would it be okay if we waited a couple of weeks? Because she said, I'm doing so much better now.
That's great.
And I said, sure, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's like you're just listening, and all of a sudden it goes, huh?
Yeah.
And it just hits you.
Yeah.
That it's like you didn't try to work it out. It's inspirational. What was it? There's this guy, Sydney Banks, the late Sydney Banks. He was a guy from Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and he had an epiphany about the connection of thought and experience, and he called it receiver mode.
Okay.
That you have different kinds of ways of thinking. One is processing thinking, and you're trying to figure things out. You're analyzing whatever, and that can be good in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
Some things you're just doing that, and you're wearing yourself out. And then, kind of like when you stop that or something, if you have the right intention, at some point this thing just happens. This light bulb comes on. You go, oh, wow, yeah. And it just comes, and it seems it's just a gift.
Yep. Some kind of connection happens.
Yeah. And there's and you're kind of the intuition guru, I think. And I mean, you've done a lot of the research on it and stuff like that. You've looked at that. I've looked at some things on research on intuition. People that do clinical intuition, do work from that point of view, they have a deeper connection with their clients. They also, some of the research shows that they're able to do diagnosis even better.
Yeah, I had this uncanny ability to diagnose people instantly. You know how I would just see, so just going back for a moment, my very first graduate experience working with clients was in a counseling center at the university where I was at school. And at one point, the intake packet was 2 sentences. Okay, for the client. It was like a tweet. We have tweets now. We didn't have them then. And I could look at the 2 sentences and diagnose the client.
Wow.
Okay, so my supervisors were like, how are you doing this, Lori? Like, not only is it unethical, but it's uncanny. But there was something that would just pop into my mind of, oh, well, this is what it is. And of course, I would never actually diagnose someone based on 2 sentences. but it's like that the relevant information would pop into my consciousness, tying it like a magnet, attracting to those sentences. The sentences were a representation of the person and what they were going through at the time. And I didn't need all of that intermediary information to help me understand what it was. So yeah, so there is something else. It's not a conscious process that can come.
No, right. You know, I've had a thing like this would happen with me too early on. Is weird. I can see this happening. So there's a new client coming in, and I don't know anything about them because we haven't even had an intake or anything yet. I'm gonna see them, and it so happens, you know, I went to the bathroom or something, washing my hands, whatever, and I think of this. I go, oh, this person's coming in with da 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 da, and lo and behold,
there it is.
There it was. I mean, it was like, you know, there's that. It's like intuition, but there's this other thing that goes on. It's kind of like if intuition is internal, then there's sort of like out tuition or something. Out, right.
And then getting back to the more mundane of being in the bathroom, I suggest that the washing of the hands helped you connect to the knowledge of what that client was going to be about. It often happens washing dishes, washing hands, in the shower, swimming. The medium of water helps us transport information out of us and into us.
Interesting.
So, yes. And you know, well, from energy psychology, that dehydration in the body can exacerbate these blocks of energy, and that when we simply drink some water, even a swallow of water, it can move things through incredibly fast.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so there's a point at which there was going to be a conference in Tallahassee at Florida State University. And and I'm getting ready. I'm going to go to this conference, and who's going to be there is Francine Shapiro doing on EMDR, and Roger's going to be presenting, and somebody on NLP. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, I don't know what it is. I have a strong feeling, I don't have any reason for having this, that I'm going to be asked to do a workshop there. I said, no, it's weird, but it feels, it's like, it's a feeling like it's definite. I said, weird, I don't know. So anyway, so I get there to the workshop, and at the conference, and I'm attending. And then there's this point where myself and several of us who were into this tapping therapy, we're sitting around talking and we're sharing things. And there's all these other people coming and listening. Who are these tapping people? And they're listening. And
you had an audience.
They want to see who these weirdos are, right? and Roger comes over and says, Fred, could you come here? I want to talk to you about something. So I go, sure, Roger. You know, and I go over. He says, Fred, I was supposed to give a workshop on how to present, you know, presenting some of the tapping, but I have to attend this meeting. He says, would you do the workshop for me? And I said, sure, Roger. You know, now that was one thing. Now here's the second one. So I had come back. Okay, so after writing the book Energy Psychology, what happened is I had this feeling like I should write the book on this approach. I didn't know what to call the approach at the time, but it was, you know, based upon not only what Roger was doing, but what I had seen, you know, with John Diamond and George Goodhart, and you know, I was looking at all that, and I thought I should write a book on it. So anyway, when I went to the conference in Tallahassee, there was this guy there who was one of the organizers of the thing, Charles Figley. So I'm at home, and I have this thought like I should write this book, but I don't know how I'm going to go about this. I've never written a book. He reaches out to me, he says, Fred, would you like to write a book? So then I write this book. Okay. And while I'm writing the book, when I'm getting toward I finished the book, and while I'm doing I realize there's these different tangents of where it needs to go. Okay. Like one tangent was the approach that I had developed. So I mentioned it in there, which I called energy diagnostic and treatment methods. And then I thought there should be a book for the general public. And then there should be a book that brings a lot of different people that are doing different variations of it together. Okay. So all that became very clear to me while I'm writing the book, Energy Psychology. The day that the book, in those days, you put paper together and you mailed it to the publisher. Now you do it on the internet, you know.
Yeah.
But, the day it went out, I'm at my office and the phone rings, and another publishing company is called now, W.W. Norton, says, we wanted to find out if you would like to write a book. They gave me a contract to write a book. Okay. And then another one, it was just like it was supposed to happen. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Now, Alfred Schutz, he's at Stanford University, and he just went there. I don't know what he was doing. He was on vacation, and he was at the
visiting.
And he was in the bookstore, and he finds a copy of Energy Psychology. So then he calls me and he says, I'd like to publish this in German. He says, I'm really impressed with what you've done here. When the book's published in German, this guy, Gunther Schmidt, who's a noted psychotherapist in Europe and Germany, and he was an Ericksonian, and he got a copy of the book. So he calls me and he says, I've read your book. He says, and I got to tell you, this works. I don't know what I'm doing. He says, so I would like you to come to Germany to present. And so the ball kept rolling, Weird. And a lot of those things happen. There's synchronicities. They're somehow related to intuition, but goes out rather than just coming in.
Well, intuition, there is no here or there. It's everywhere at once. So
Sure.
It's a matter of our perspective of how it goes and where it goes, and whether we're seeding our own future for ourselves anyway. And then we pick up on the cues that, it's like leaving breadcrumbs in reverse.
Yeah.
So, you've touched on a lot of different themes, and with intuition and with the higher self. And I'd like to maybe end with a question here. Do you perceive that our higher self is engaged with our well-being, even if we're not aware of it or feeling connected to it?
Explain that a little further.
So you talked about in the beginning about being engaged with our higher self at moments when we can kind of get into context rather than content. Right. And I guess what I'm wondering, I know that there's been some recent work with the higher self in terms of healing modalities through energy psychology. And I'm wondering if you're seeing a magnetic pull that our higher self is kind of always there for us, even if we're shielded from understanding or seeing it or feeling it or even knowing that it's there.
I think it's always there. The question is whether the person's enlightened to be in touch with it, and I think everybody has the capacity to do that. But the problem is people look outside of themselves more than inside. There's the old Zen statement, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Okay. The more you're looking for it out there, whenever really the Buddha's in here, inside. Okay. How many people, apparently a lot of people don't get in touch with that in this world. Unfortunately, you see a lot of the stuff that happens in the world, very sad. And it's a result of, I think, not being at a higher level of your higher self. Okay. People are very easily manipulated whenever they're unaware. But I think I think it's the source of healing.
Yes, it's exerting an influence whether you're feeling connected to it or not.
Yeah. I wish you all the best, all
Thank
of you
you.
out there listening to this. And if you want to get maybe a little, if I could do a little plug, my book, Energy Tapping, or the Tapping Toolbox,
Yes.
brings in some stuff about intuition
Uh-huh.
and how to utilize some tapping in conjunction with that. And
Wonderful.
I think it could be useful for you, you
Yeah.
know.
It'll all be in
So,
the program notes. People can enjoy that and all the links. Oh, thank
okay,
you
thank.
so much for your generosity of sharing your
Well, thank
wisdom,
you.
experience, and time.
Well,
It's
thank you for
always,
the conversation. I mean, I enjoyed what you have to say too.
thank you. Okay,
Appreciate
bye-bye, everyone.
it. Okay.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.